Welcome in, everybody, to week 8 of the college football show. We're coming off a heater week. We went 7-1, a bunch of big games in week 8. We're going to get into all of the marquee matchups right after this. Go ahead and lock in.
Give a damn about a hater when I feel like it. Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please. I'm trying to get paid. Not today.
All right. So we're coming off a big week in week 7. Our model went 7-1. And just like that, you get 12 hours and you're right back at the markets. We're now week 8. We got a bunch of games to break down. Maybe one of the biggest weeks in college football of all season. First off, we're headed to Friday Night Lights. Oklahoma State here versus BYU. Model has us on Oklahoma State. We grabbed a 7.5. Market has disagreed with us up to this point, sitting at 9.5. Steve, break down this game for me. What are your thoughts? Oklahoma State has obviously looked pretty lackluster, but new week, halfway through. I believe they're coming off a bye week. Maybe this is a spot to get right.
Yeah, so let's hop into it real quick. First and foremost, let's go over some trends here. Oklahoma State 0-3 in Big 12 play, 2-4 against the spread, 1-1 against the spread on the road. And then meanwhile, you've got BYU. Oh my Lord, not just 6-0 straight up, 6-0 against the spread as well. Now, like you mentioned, Oklahoma State is coming off a bye. One of the things to kind of keep an eye on here, and probably while this market has moved, is on their media day on Monday, Mike Gundy was pretty non-committal about keeping quarterback Alan Bowman as the starter. When asked about it, he said essentially all the guys are getting good work and they're going to have a decision by Thursday. So that could be affecting the market here. And then on top of that, they said no injury update for the health of Ollie Gordon, star running back, as well as receiver Brendan Presley. So you look at this, like this is one of those things where Oklahoma State, clearly this is not the season they thought they were going to have. Big 12 play has been absolutely horrible for them. But I am curious, though, when playing as an unranked team, OK State has won 5 consecutive and 11 out of the last 14 against top 25 teams. So could this be a bounce back game for the Cowboys here? My thoughts, though, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what the health, obviously, of OK State. If you're going to be a BYU backer, obviously we're on OK State plus 8.5, like you said. If you're going to be a BYU backer, though, now's probably the time to buy, because once you get to Thursday and it shows that they are going to start maybe Garrett Rangel instead of Alan Bowman, I expect that market to continue, though. But what are you seeing from maybe a little more data standpoint on what's happening with these teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting there for some of the trends. I mean, the stats here are pretty interesting. BYU is definitely a better team than what we thought coming in. They're currently sitting at the 34th overall pass team, 97th rush team. Oklahoma, I agree with you. You very much hit it on the head of this is not the season that we thought. This is the 41st ranked passing offense, but the 125th rushing offense. We've kind of talked about this team a couple of times this season. This team cannot run the ball. And BYU is a really good defense, 13th against the pass, 53rd against the rush. But Oklahoma, defensively, they're not really there either. 76th against the pass, 105th against the rush. BYU can and probably will have some success in this game. This is the one thing that I think the model is picking up on. Oklahoma State, you can look at those numbers. They're defensively not ranked very well, but they definitely are what I would call a bend don't break defense. This is a team that is 125th in echo rate over expected, meaning they are really allowing their teams that they're playing to drive on them and get to the 40 or better. But, and this is a really important but, their points per echo. So once those teams get to the 40 or better, they are the 24th best defense in giving up points with 3.8 points per echo. So yes, teams can drive the ball. They can get what we call an echo, which would be kind of a successful drive, but they're forcing teams to pay those off with field goals. And I think here is if you can have that happen against this BYU team, you're going to be able to hang in and cover that number. Now, the market completely tells us we're foolish sitting at 9.5. I do disagree with you, Steve. I think this number is reflecting a change at quarterback, not that. I don't think this number gets much higher is my larger point. I don't think I would be shocked if we were on the other side of 10. I really do think that. Now, that being said, there isn't a lot here for wanting to be an Oklahoma State backer. They might be without their best player in Ollie Gordon. That being said, this is a team that can't really run the ball. So how important is that? I'm not really sure. both these teams are passing the ball fairly often. 10% pass rate over expected for Oklahoma State, 4% for BYU. This BYU defense, though, is the real deal. And so I'm a little concerned that Oklahoma State isn't going to be able to move the ball. And then you compound that with a new quarterback. I'm a little questioning why they're making a move at quarterback. Oklahoma State's the 41st best passing offense right now. That doesn't seem like something you would want to change, but maybe Gundy knows something I don't.
Yeah, and to that point, we have seen Rango play a couple of games so far, and I think to your point,
Okay.
statistics. But then there's the end result, right? When you're 0-3 in the conference play, when you were preseason, I forgot what they were in, but they were, if not ranked, they had some pretty high, lofty expectations going into the season
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Clearly, those have not panned out. So you can call it the pressure, call it the hot seat, call it the boosters, whatever you want to call it. People are demanding answers or at least change for better or for worse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just I'll get an update on the market. Like I said, this opened at 7.5, got as high as 10.5, it's gone all the kind of way, all the way to 10.5, and it's bought back down to 9.5. So kind of nonstop buying until that 10. So there has been a lot of resistance there now twice. It's gotten to that 10 number twice and been bought back down. So I think that is the ceiling. We have a 7.5. So we're not looking too hot here. Again, we kind of just fundamentally disagree with this team. Gundy is notorious for overperforming in these spots. Again, you talked about 0-3 in the Big 12, 1-0 in the SEC. Okay. Oh no, they ended up losing that game. They should have won that game. But yeah, I mean, this is a team. No, did they win? I think they did. They let Arkansas come all the way back, and then I think they ended up losing in overtime. So they're 1-0 in the SEC, but 0-3 in the Big 12. So, yeah, I don't know. This one feels gross, no doubt about it. I would. I mean, I'm not going to fade the model. I've already bet it, but this one, even looking at the data, I think, like I said, the Eckel rate over expected and the points per Eckel, I think, is where you're getting some of that. And then I think just overall head coaching, we do take some of that into our model, and I think that there is a little bit of a advantage potentially coming off a buy there. All right, anything else on this game, Steve?
Not on this game, but when we get to the CFB landscape, I want to come back and talk about BYU again because I think there might be a sneaky good futures play there. But let's save it for later.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right. Next, we are heading into one of the best games of the weekend, in my opinion. Nebraska, Indiana. Both these teams, these are really great buy spots. Both these programs are on the up and up. Indiana just blowing through the Big Ten this year. Nebraska had some bumps, but has definitely made a lot of improvements in this 2024 season. Give me your thoughts on this game, Steve. This is looking to be one of the best matchups, maybe in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, this is going to be a sneaky good matchup. So again, we'll start with Nebraska 4-1-1 against the spread, 1-0 against the spread when they are the away team. Indiana blistering 5-1 against the spread, 3-1 against the spread at home. Now, what I find is a fun fact, we're going to talk about this. I imagine this to be one of your talking points too, Seth, is Indiana's offense, particularly their passing offense, is pretty damn efficient and pretty damn elite. They are one of 8 teams nationwide to have scored first in each of its games. They are one of only 2 teams to have never trailed in a game this season. Them and Army are the only 2 teams all year to have never trailed. And when you talk about who is the highest graded quarterback in the Big Ten, at least from PFF grades, it's not Drew Aller. It's not Dylan Gabriel. It's Curtis Rourke. It's Curtis Rourke for IU. I mean, this team is absolutely blistering. We've seen this open up at Indiana -4, gotten all the way up to Indiana -6.5 currently, at least last time I checked. And again, for me, it's going to be that passing game. It's just far more elite. And I don't know how Nebraska is going to keep up. Now, of course, Dylan Raiola has been getting all the praise this year. Pat Mahomes Jr. on and off the field. But I think this is going to be sort of that different scenario because I don't know if they face an offense as efficient as Indiana's proven so far.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, in our numbers for our passing EPA, Indiana is the 2nd overall most efficient passing team, 42nd against the rush. Nebraska, 49th best passing offense, 56th rushing offense. On defense, both these teams are really good. Indiana, 19th against the pass, 26th against the rush. Nebraska, 15th against the pass, 22nd against the rush. Both of these teams are going to be good, and that's why I think this is going to be a really good game. An interesting stat here for how I think this game could potentially pan out if you want to be a Nebraska backer. So both of these teams drive pretty well. We're talking about the 2nd and 3rd teams in Eckel rate over expected. So both these teams are getting really good quality drives. Now, the interesting thing here for Nebraska, they're not paying those drives off. Unfortunately, 102nd in points per Eckel at 4.1 points. So they're one of the best teams driving, but they're not paying those drives off on touchdowns. But this is the angle. Indiana, we talked about it. 15th against the pass, 22nd against the rush. Points per Eckel on defense. This team falls to 130th in points per Eckel, almost giving up a full touchdown once teams get to the 40 or better. So is this the kind of get right spot? So Nebraska struggles once they get to the red zone, basically, but Indiana is notorious basically for letting these teams score once they get there. And I don't think that you talked about it. I don't think they're used to really teams getting there. Nebraska is going to be able to drive the ball. It's just going to be, what are they going to get? Are they going to get field goals or are they going to get touchdowns? If they get touchdowns, this is going to be a really close game. And I think that's, to me, the path for a Nebraska upset. On the other side, if Indiana kind of continues to do what they do, they look unstoppable. They're actually the #1 weighted EPA offense in our database. So when we look at the things that teams can do or are doing that are predictive of teams winning and covering, Indiana is literally the #1 offense. So, if they keep that up, this could be a little bit of a bloodbath. We show a little teeny bit of value there for Nebraska. We show that about a 2% edge. These sevens, this has got as high as 7 and got immediately bought back down. And now 6.5 across the board. So if you want to be a Nebraska backer, there's some data telling you you're kind of at the ceiling here at the 6.5, 7 number. So, don't get too greedy out there. I can see a world, obviously, where Nebraska covers. I can see a world where Indiana covers, but I think this is going to be your classic Big Ten, just ground and pound, just strangulation, defensive battle, field position. And both these teams, quite honestly, are equipped defensively to play that type of game. I love this game. I was sad I couldn't catch the sevens. I thought about betting it. The raw number for us is 4. That's what we make the true number, 4. And I think that sounds about right to me. I think this could definitely be a field goal game. And I don't know. What about you? What are you, just Indiana nonstop here?
Yeah, I think so. For me, what worries me, again, we talk about the efficiency of Indiana's offense, but look at Nebraska. I mean, you kind of alluded to this right now. So when you talk about Big Ten matchups, you think about ground and pound and kind of defensive battles going on there. Nebraska's run rate over expected, right? -6%. So what does that mean, right? So they're, slight distribution, slight preference to throwing the ball over running it. But when you have an Indiana offense, and we've seen this with other high-powered offenses, you get these teams where, they want to slow down the opponent. The best defense is their offense, meaning that they want to make sure they run the ball. They want to make sure they bleed the clock. They want to make sure they're keeping their opposing quarterback on the sideline. Is Nebraska going to get so caught up in that game plan that become too one-dimensional, and all of a sudden they become a little easier to stop? And then once Indiana gets the lead, can Nebraska switch it up and kind of keep going back? I don't know. From a fan standpoint, I definitely am loving Indiana. I'm actually kind of glad that we're not on anything on this one. I know the model has a 4, but for me, this is going to be a 1. I see it being a 1-score game, i.e. a 1-touchdown game. Going back and forth. So I'm with you. 7 feels a lot more comfortable. 7.5 even better. But I would be my butthole would be a little clenched at 4.
Yeah. I still may buy this depending on where the market goes. I just think this is a good spot. I mean, we did see Nebraska struggle against Illinois, to your point, a team that can throw the ball pretty well. So I think that's more of the pathway for what the Hoosiers can kind of do here in a game state where they lose by 10 or 14 or something like this. I'm just not sure that this can be a blowout. I really do think these teams are going to try to run the ball quite a lot and kind of control the line of scrimmage. And I think that just eats so much clock that it's hard to have those types of game states. But I don't know. I'm excited to watch that game. For me, it's got to be Nebraska plus 6.5 or nothing. Maybe some money line. I don't think I'm that crazy.
Ooh. Can I give you one last fun fact before we move on?
Yes.
Nebraska. So we talk about how Indiana has never trailed in a game this year. Nebraska's only trailed for 15 minutes and 15 seconds this entire season. 11 plus of those minutes came against Illinois, who they ultimately lost to in overtime. So you're talking about, take that one game away, 4 minutes of trailing the entire season. So your point about not being a blowout, Nebraska definitely at least has a game plan.
And both these teams are coming off buys, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, that's also another aspect of this. I think this does feel like the first step up in class for Indiana. They haven't really played any of the big dogs in the Big Ten, have they? I don't think so.
For Indiana, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've come off there. Let's take a look. They've come off of Northwestern, Maryland, Charlotte, and UCLA. Yeah, and then before that is just all FCS teams. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, UCLA is okay, but they're definitely not the typical. This Nebraska team is a very different team than that UCLA team.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I
Yeah.
just this game intrigues me. This game intrigues
Yeah.
me. I want to be a big red backer, but the number's just not quite there. I think it would take a 7 to really truly bet it for me. And the model needs basically a cheap 7.5. If you can get a cheap 7, meaning 105 or better, it would meet our threshold. But I haven't seen that number yet. So
Sure.
all right, we're headed into one of the biggest games of the year. Whew. Good old Rocky Top, Knoxville, Tennessee. We're talking about Alabama versus Tennessee. This game is so good, Steve. We're going to it. We're going to be there. This
That's
is
right.
going to be an amazing, amazing game. It's shaping up to be one of the best of the year. Just some quick stats here on Alabama. We're talking about the 15th pass efficient team on offense, 19th rushing offense. Tennessee 46th on passing offense and 33rd rushing the ball. So, Steve, break this one down for me. This is a classic SEC matchup. Alabama on the road after a loss and a nail biter. What's going to happen here?
Yeah. I mean, this is so good. We're getting BTB game day there, right? Like, who needs college game day when you got us? Yeah. So real quick, Alabama 3-3 against the spread this year, 1-1 against the spread as an away team. Tennessee 4-2 against the spread, 2-1 as a home team. And for me, like, this is one of the ones where I get a little concerned. I mean, spoiler alert, we're on Bama here, and the market has agreed. It's open at -1, it's up to -3 currently there. So for me, what's going to come down to is, one, can Alabama figure out what's going on with it? So people are going to say, all right, well, obviously you lost to Vanderbilt, and then you had a close game against South Carolina, even though they were 21-point favorites, they still won, and winning is all that matters. Others are going to say, they blew a game against Vandy, and they damn near blew a game against South Carolina, and they probably really should have lost that game as well. Whatever is broken is not fixed. And so for me, what's going to come down to, we talk about this time and time again with Tennessee. Everyone gets in love with Nico Iamaleava. Everyone gets in love with that Tennessee offense, putting up however many points it was that one half. But it's their defense. It's Tennessee's defense that's been really good this year.
Yes.
And a little fun fact here, they've held opponents under 20 points in 8 straight games. Now, when you combined that with the Josh Heupel offense, which is pretty Lane Kiffin-esque, all right, since 2018, when Heupel came to the league, where Heupel's been a head coach, he's second only to Lincoln Riley in games of 40-plus points scored on offense. So for me, I'm looking at Tennessee's defense to be able to figure out Alabama. And then can Alabama's offense overcome that? And really, can Alabama's defense step up and really kind of come through in some key scenarios there? But I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a great matchup. A little jab to the Tennessee fans here. Alabama, 27-21-1 all time in Knoxville, in Tennessee. And Nayland Stadium, supposedly one of the hardest stadiums to play in the country.
Yeah.
Alabama that's Tuscaloosa. Excuse me, that's Tuscaloosa North. So
West,
we'll
East,
see.
West. They got a bunch
Yeah.
of. They got like every. They got the compass rose on lock there. So yeah, you're right here. This is going to be a great game because of exactly what you highlighted. Alabama's offense going up against Tennessee's defense, and it's going to be who wants to win the game. But you're exactly right. Tennessee 38th against the pass, number 1 against the run. And what does Bama want to do? They're 1% over expected in rush rate. So this is a team that is tending to want to run more. And what does Tennessee do? They stop the run. So they're going to basically force Milroe to throw it all over and to have success here. Now, that being said, you talked about Tennessee's offense. 46th passing offense, 33rd rushing offense for Tennessee. Alabama, 47th against the pass, 25th against the rush. So there is going to be opportunity for Tennessee to have some success. Now, that being said, as we've gotten deeper into this SEC schedule, Tennessee has definitely regressed. This is not the team that we saw when they're beating Kent State 40 points in one quarter or something like this. They've kind of gotten worse week in, week out. And, after they ended up they ended up coming out alive last week against Florida. Graham Mertz hurts and tears his ACL. Shout out to Graham Mertz. Great career. Sorry, had to go out on that sword there, but non-injury contact right after throwing a touchdown. I don't know if Tennessee makes it out of that game with a W if Mertz doesn't go down there. And I'm a little concerned here that the Tennessee hype that we saw early in the season was really against inferior opponents. We saw what we thought was an impressive outing against Oklahoma. Texas did it better, quite frankly. And they made it look a lot more, I don't know, just straightforward. And quite frankly, they pretty much did it in 2 quarters. And so I'm a little concerned here that Tennessee is kind of falling to the classic Tennessee problem, which is they beat up subpar and bad opponents, but when they play the elite SEC teams, Georgia and Alabama, they get dog walked. Interesting here from a drive standpoint. Tennessee is better driving the ball. They're 27th in echo rate over expected versus Alabama being 50th. But Bama is much better in paying those drives off. Alabama is 25th in points per echo, where Tennessee is only 57th. So again, this to me is literally Tennessee's offense or Tennessee's defense versus Alabama's offense. If Alabama's going to have success, I think it's going to be a long day there. And if Tennessee is able to kind of slow this Alabama offense, I do think that this is going to be a good game. This is going to be the best defense that Alabama has seen. So Georgia, 43rd, South Carolina, 36th, Tennessee, 4th overall. Okay, so this is a bit of a different weight class. But we talked about Tennessee's offense. Again, they've regressed. We're talking about the 6th overall offense in Alabama. We're talking about the 62nd overall offense here in Tennessee. So I don't know. For me, a lot of concerns on what we're going to get out of Tennessee, but I mean, I think the team can win. It's just there's some questions we're going to have to get answered in that game to make sure it kind of all comes together, so to speak.
Yeah. And we talk about Alabama having these kind of questionable games. Obviously, the loss to Vandy looks pretty bad, although, less bad after they beat Kentucky, but still, not great.
No, Vandy's good. Vandy's good. Vandy's good this year.
Okay.
We can talk about
it. Okay. All right. You got okay. All right. We'll save it for later. All right. But then you look at Kalen DeBoer, 13-2 against top 25 teams. So is this going to be one of those things where has Alabama fell victim to obviously they had that thriller of a game against Georgia, let down spot, if you want to call that, against a Vandy team, and then kind of playing down to their opponent, and then now we have another team that's supposed to be elite in the SEC. Are we going to see them rise to the occasion and get back to Bama football that we're used to seeing? Time will tell, but yeah, I'm excited to be there. I'm excited to see it. Rocky Top. Woo!
Yeah. If anybody is in Knoxville, please come say hi to us or let us know some good places to eat and drink. We're going to be there all weekend, so come say hi. I mean, Kalen DeBoer is already also kind of putting, in my opinion, some undue little bit flame on the, burning or making the flames a little bit more hot here. Basically saying, I don't know, I'm from Washington. I know about loud stadiums. I'm not really concerned about the noise. So this feels like, the same thing happened Saban a couple weeks ago. Vandy's going to play the clip of Saban. I feel like Tennessee wins or it goes on 3rd down or whatever it is. They're going to be playing this clip of saying, hey, it's not that loud.
100%.
And yeah, I mean, I'll be blending in here. I'm sure the boys are going to want to have some Tennessee parlay. I'm going to be game here, but the model is on Alabama, so I have some action on Alabama.
Yeah,
maybe based on where the market's headed here, I don't know. So far, 3 has been where we're at. I don't know if there has been any resistance. No, this is basically went from 1 to 3, got a little bit bought back down, but then back to 3. So are we going to see more money move this even further through 4, through 4.5, 5? I don't know, but there is potentially a middle opportunity here for us, depending on where we end up. But I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun either way. I think this is going to be a good SEC matchup. All right, Steve, another great matchup headed back to the Big Ten, Michigan versus Illinois. Illinois coming off a nail biter against Purdue. I'm sure they did not forecast to be in that situation. Had to take that game to overtime in order to beat Purdue in the last basically seconds of the game. Pulled away. It was a nail biter, no doubt about it. Michigan kind of a very interesting team coming off the national championship last year. Break this team down for me. What are we getting out of this game?
Yeah, it's we talk about Big Ten football being ugly. This game is going to be ugly. Let's start with some of the trends here. So, Michigan 1-5 against the spread this year, 1-4 against the spread away. Illinois, complete opposite, 4-1 against the 4-1-1, excuse me, against the spread, 2-1-1 against the spread at home. Now, Michigan has owned this series, 72, 23-2 all time, winning the last 6. They haven't lost at Illinois since 2009. Now, the big things going to look out for here, Jack Tuttle, right? New starting quarterback
Yes.
at Michigan. They've done the orgy experience. They've done the Warren experiment. They've gone back and forth. Uncle Jack Tuttle is going to be the man at the helm here. But Illinois here. So Illinois is a pretty interesting team to me. I'll give you one last little actually, let me give you the big fun fact now. So
Okay. Yeah. Give it to me.
So Illinois plays at Memorial Stadium. Okay, that's the name of their stadium.
Okay.
This stadium was built in 1924. Why is that important? So when they opened the stadium, they had a Memorial Stadium dedication game, and they played against Michigan.
Michigan.
All right. In that game, the Galloping Ghost, Red Grange, scored 4 touchdowns in the first 12 minutes to beat then undefeated Michigan, and quite frankly, what was a blowout. Why am I telling you this? This weekend will be the 100th anniversary. They're
Oh,
having a rededication Memorial Stadium game, a rededication game for this. They're going to be wearing their retro 1920s uniforms. And I'm just saying, is history going to repeat itself here? One of the things you look at is, we talked about all season long, Michigan definitely hangs its hat on defense, but this offense, which was pretty good a year ago. I mean, this national championship team has taken a far step back.
oh yeah.
Illinois' offense has been pretty efficient overall. So what are we going to see here? Unstoppable force against Michigan defense versus the immovable object against Illinois' offense. So for me, I'm looking at the dedication route. I'm looking at the hype around this 1920s Ghost of Red Grange. I'm loving some Illinois in this, but tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Michigan, Michigan, the market is open at -1, Michigan, and the market has moved to Michigan -3.
And our model liked Michigan
Yeah.
and does like Michigan. And I actually, we'll talk about it. Let's go through the data. Michigan really struggles against the pass. Newsflash here. We all know that. Michigan, 124th passing offense, 44th rushing offense. Illinois, 21st passing, 69th rushing team. On the other side of the ball, though, Illinois can throw. We're talking about the 14th pass offense, 101st rushing offense. So this is a primary throw first team. Michigan 67th against the pass, 21st against the rush. This to me is just the classic Michigan kind of Python, just strangulate, just run the ball, eat the clock. I think possessions are going to be at a premium in this game. I'm not sure that Illinois is going to be able to throw the ball and keep up, because I don't know that there's going to be enough possessions. Now, the one thing that is very concerning if you are a Michigan backer or you want to be an Illinois backer here, Michigan has struggled against teams that can throw the ball, period, point blank. We've seen it with Texas, probably the best example. But if we look at their defensive pass rate over expected, it's 50%. Teams are throwing on Michigan 50% more than an average team. So teams that basically everybody's trying to throw on them, but the teams that can throw, I'm very concerned that maybe they have success. Again, though, I would say if Illinois does have success, how many possessions and how many drives are they going to be able to put together? Because they're going to have a perfect kind of record there. Because if Michigan is just doing these long methodical drives, and there isn't a whole lot of faith to think that maybe Illinois will be able to stop Michigan driving the ball on the ground, that's where, for me, I like this bet. I bet it myself. I have a -1.5 going with the model here. We didn't end up giving it out to the members just because there are a lot of unknowns here. You have a whole new quarterback that could really just throw a wrench in this. All of a sudden, Michigan wants to throw the ball 100 times. That could be really concerning. And so you don't really know what you're buying. But I went ahead and just kind of trusted the process here. I'm with the market. I'm on a 1.5. I think 3s are starting to get pretty expensive. You probably have a little bit of wiggle room, to be honest. But again, you're buying an unknown. You're buying a quarterback you have no data on. That can be tricky.
Yeah.
And is Illinois all day for you?
Yeah, Illinois. So again, from Chicago, Illinois background, Illinois tie. This is just for me, this is a purely emotional fan thing, right? You talk about, and just as a timeout here, guys, we talk about betting the process and on this pathway to try to become professional bettors. And what does that look like, right? Seth has mentioned a lot of times about the process here, trusting the model, looking at data, advanced metrics that have shown to be more predictive to predicting outcomes in terms of who's going to win, and then, of course, who's going to cover. And then there's the emotional side he's trying to get away from. But damn it, as a football fan, if this is not the all-time feel-good story, if you're an Illinois backer, right? Same team, 100 years later, almost to the dot. Turning back time, Michigan coming off a national championship team or season looking absolutely vulnerable. Like, why not now, right? And especially a team that has owned you for 100 years. Why not now? Why not today? So it's just a feel-good story for me. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. I can get behind it. Ironically, Illinois making a mistake is the only reason we met.
That is true.
So there you go.
Classic Illinois fashion. They'll mess it up somehow.
Fashion. I mean, we're talking about a 3-point spread here. Anything can happen. I think Illinois can definitely be in this game. And to me, it's that pass rate. If you see Illinois get the ball and just throw the ball and just be able to move down the field, you are Michigan's on immediate upset alert, because basically that is the way to beat them. If they cannot stop you there, it's going to be a long day. And in fact, it's going to be even harder for them to keep up, because again, they themselves can't throw the ball very well. Now we have this unknown with a new quarterback, but again, Michigan is Michigan. I don't think they're going to be getting away from running the ball here. I think that's going to be their primary, modus operandi there. And I don't know. I'm happy to try to trust the model. 1.5, seen some CLV. I'm not going to chase this any further. I wouldn't be shocked if Illinois can make the upset in a bit of a bounce back spot. After that Purdue game, which Purdue had a new quarterback, and you could see how that went in their favor. So, all right, cool. I like it. All right, we're headed to maybe the best game of the week, second best game of the week, depending on Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas. Holy moly. This game is in Austin. This thing opened up, I think, at 3.5, is still sitting at 3.5. Hasn't really moved very much. We are on Georgia. Model likes Georgia in this spot. Can't tell you how gross it does feel, because Texas does seem to be on fire. So give me your thoughts. Give me some trends. Give me some data I need to break down and understand this game, Steve.
All right. Well, first, let me make you feel a lot worse. And anyone who's going to be your Georgia backer, let's just get this out the way, because it's going to be ugly.
Go Dogs.
Georgia, 1-5 against the spread this year, 0-2 against the spread on away games. In fact, the only game they've covered this year was the week 1 neutral site game against Clemson. They are 1-4 all time against Texas. And they are 17-18 all time when College Game Day crew is part of their games, which College Game Day will be down in Austin this year. On the flip side, Texas 5-1 against the spread this year, 3-1 against the spread as a home team, and they are getting off to a blistering start. We've talked about them a few times this week. Texas is outscoring opponents 56-3 in the first quarter alone this season, and it's really hard to play from behind. So now, interesting tidbit here, Kirby Smart, 2-1 against number 1 ranked teams while he's at Georgia, and he has 99 wins going into this matchup. So this could be a monumental 100th win for Kirby. You better believe the boys are going to be chopping wood all day, all night. Now, well, let me pause there.
Okay.
Hearing all that, is there anything that jumps out to you, or anything that makes you say, hey, trends be damned, Georgia plus 3.5 is a good bet, because that's what we're on right now?
Kind of yes, kind of no. I'm not going to lie to you. The data are interesting. So you talked about, we can highlight Texas offense, pretty efficient. 5th overall passing offense, 71st rushing offense. Georgia, though, 21st rushing offense, 21st passing offense, 50th rushing offense. On defense, both these teams are pretty good, but definitely Texas takes the cake there. Texas 4th against the pass, 11th against the rush. Georgia 59th against the pass, 24th against the rush. Both these teams can drive the ball. We're talking, high echo rates, one of the top, 20 for both these teams. Both these teams on points per echo, 5.7 points per echo for Texas, 5.3 for Georgia. So once they get successful drives, they're paying them off with touchdowns. The big data point for me is strength of schedule. Huge data point. So we talked about all those stats here, but we're talking about a Texas team here that is 82nd hardest strength of schedule. They've had one of the easiest schedules in the nation. Georgia, on the other hand, 7th hardest schedule. So when we're talking about those stats, these are the hardcore teams Georgia's already played. We're talking about Alabama, talking about Kentucky, Clemson, Auburn, Mississippi State. Who's Texas played? Michigan. We just talked about how fallible they are. Mississippi State. Now, both of these teams struggled. Texas did not cover against Mississippi State, by the way. And then Oklahoma. And by the way, we're getting a lot of data that Oklahoma is not very good this year, specifically on offense. And is their defense really up to par? So that is the pathway here. And then you talked about it, coaching. I do think Kirby Smart has the nod here between the two coaches. Now, I think Sark is a good coach, but we've seen time in and time out in the big moments, Texas has not showed up. They're coming off a huge emotional win last week. Ewers looked pretty good in the second half. He definitely looked rusty, specifically in the first quarter. I don't know what you're getting necessarily quickly from Texas. I do have much more confidence that Georgia has been here before. The coaches have been here before. A lot of the players have been here before. This is not the biggest stage Georgia has played on. They're playing for national championships. Obviously, Texas is as well, but those are my concerns. I think the data that we're seeing are against much easier opponents. Georgia by far has had to, play the gauntlet here. And so I think that's what the model is picking up ultimately is this Georgia kind of program has been through this a bit more. Texas is on their way up. Maybe this is the year they break through. But in this game, when you're talking about a potential close shootout, I think 3 and a hook is where you want to be.
Yeah. And I saw an interesting fact here, and we saw this during this Alabama game. Georgia is not afraid to go for it on 4th down. We've seen Georgia go through and say, hey, listen, I'm willing to take some risks to get back in a game, to win a game, to do whatever I got to do. Interesting fun fact, they are 3rd nationally in 4th down conversion rate at 91%. They're 10 of 11 this year. And in the Kirby Smart era, they convert on 65% of their 4th down conversions with 11 touchdowns. So to your point here, even if this game kind of gets, even this game's kind of a back and forth, blow for blow, Georgia, you said it, have been there. They've been on the national stage, and they're not afraid to take risks. And, I think that's, to the victor go the spoils. I think that's going to be one of the ones where can coaching come down to? I mean, we've seen this year a ton of questionable decisions on 4th to go, right?
Yeah.
Where teams are going for it, where it makes no sense. There's no analytical database that tells you should be doing this. They're foregoing field goals. They're leaving points on the board. But Kirby Smart seems to have this under control, seems to know when to take these calculated risks. And so can the coaching as well be the narrow difference in this game? I think so.
Yeah. And quite frankly, they've just been tested way more. They've been tested weekend. You talked about being tested in Kentucky. To me, is that a bad thing? You can't tell me the ultimate test wasn't. What were they down 28 points in Alabama? Came back to take the lead.
Right.
I mean, this is a resilient team, and you can't tell me it doesn't get worse than that feeling. They were in Bama, down, getting murdered. They came all the way back. Right. I think this is a resilient team. Again, a team that's been there before. Carson Beck, I think, can definitely take the reins here and have some success. The market is kind of at war, and I'm not surprised by this. This thing opened at 3, immediately to 3.5, bought right back down to 3, and then right back to 3.5. So the market is basically saying, look, it's just two sides of this coin, and we're on the Georgia side. Yeah. And I don't know. It feels uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. It feels like Texas is, but I'm saying when we look back, is this the letdown spot for Texas when we get their first true test, and maybe some of those things that they could mask when they're playing the Oklahomas of the world, they can't necessarily do against the Georgias of the world. So I like this. I like this bet. It's going to be uncomfortable, but no doubt this is going to be a good game.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So we've broken those down. We're on a number of these big games. So if you're wanting to follow the model, we're on Georgia -3. We are on Alabama -2.5. If you want to follow me on Michigan -1.5 is the number I got. And then Oklahoma State, you can get now a 9.5. I think we have a 7.5. So a number of these big games, if you want to fire on, we show value on a number of these.
Yeah, just to clarify on Georgia plus 3.5. And this
Sorry.
is not alt season. Not alt season here.
Oh, we're on plus 3.5. Sorry, what I said. Did I say minus 3.5?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Alt season was last week. Another Texas alt. I guess I don't have it in me this week. All right, we're headed to the landscape. This has been a really good season. Week 6 was like everybody was talking about how it was going to be not very entertaining. Ended up being a bloodbath. We've seen a lot of changes. Texas now takes the cake. They are the #1 team in our power rating. Not far behind is Ohio State, and then you can see Georgia, Alabama, and it always seems to not happen when we bet on them. But Ole Miss shit in the bed there in Death Valley, the real Death Valley.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. Give me some of your thoughts on week 7. What were your larger takeaways?
Man, it's one of those things where we give so much attention to the big teams. And I understand, right? These are the major programs. They're bringing in all the money. They're SEC teams. They're Big Ten teams. But I want to take a step back here, and I want to talk about the armies and the navies of the world, right? The teams that aren't really getting a lot of press. Teams are going 6-0 for the first time, looking like legitimate teams here. And what I'm concerned about, you see Army, it's in that top right-hand corner, right underneath the BYU, to the right of Utah there. That's what we call the quadrant of elite there. I want to call it right now. I'm not personally on, them to make the playoffs. We talk about, the leader of the Group 5, the highest ranked team of the Group of 5 champions is going to get an automatic bid, right?
Yep.
So right now, that seems to be Boise State. Ashton Jeanty is doing otherworldly things and running back there. But Notre Dame is one of those, you see right there, up in there, the elite of the elite with Ohio State, Texas. We've seen them struggle a couple of times this year. We've seen them lose outright. We've seen how they're close with that game against NIU. Notre Dame has to play Army and Navy this year. And I'll be damned if I don't think Notre Dame's going to come out of that unscathed here. So, can we get some national spotlight love for one of these G5 teams? Texas State's another one that's really good. It's not really getting a lot of love here. And finally, BYU. Now, it's not a G5 team. It's a Big 12 team.
Yeah.
BYU, I saw an interesting line here. FanDuel has BYU at plus 400 to make the playoffs. Okay. Currently, BYU is sitting atop the Big 12 standings, tied with Iowa State and Texas Tech. All three of them are at 3-0, and BYU is ranked 13th. Iowa State is ranked 9th. So, looking at this, I think BYU has a chance on its own merit just to be a top 12 team. They're the one spot out right now, but the Big 12 is obviously the easiest pathway to it. What I find interesting is Iowa State and Texas Tech still have to play each other. K-State has to play Iowa State and Texas Tech. ASU has some matchups. So essentially, BYU has a mechanism here. I believe BYU only has to play K-State to end the year. But essentially what I'm saying is there is going to be a lot of bloodbath between the 0-loss and 1-loss teams because they have to play each other.
Yeah.
BYU doesn't. So BYU has a direct pathway to either be undefeated. Again, they do have to play. Let me make sure I'm telling you guys correctly here. They do have to play Arizona State still, who's 2-1, so they're in that mix, right? But besides that, BYU has a wide open pathway to win the Big 12, and I think at plus 400, those odds are pretty generous for a team that's already ranked 13th. So they have two legitimate ways to sneak into the top 12.
Okay, you mentioned this earlier, so I picked up what you're putting down while we were talking. I ran the Sims.
Oh, okay.
Can anybody confirm on? Can you confirm on Caesars what their number is?
I can look right now.
Okay, the Sims show exactly what you highlighted. Lots of value across the board. Greens lighten up here. The true number we make it plus 191. But it's showing right now that Caesars you could get a plus 2200. I'm assuming it's not available because if it is, we're pausing this live and we're betting it now.
Yeah, that might be the still line of the century.
But it gets better even yet. BetMGM claims that there's a plus 4,000. So I'm starting with Caesars because that's at least somewhat reasonable. I doubt that there's a plus 4,000 out there. But yeah, you're exactly right. At plus 450, tons of value. At FanDuel plus 350, make more out of every moment or whatever they say. You can get plus 350. Both are EV. Both are EV. So you've highlighted here a good opportunity for any BYU backers. The Sims of the rest of the season actually completely agree with you.
Yeah, no, and that's good to see the mental model and the model
Yeah.
are lining up. Shout out to our producer Eric. I agree with you, Eric. I just saw it right now. Plus 475 is the real line on Caesars. And you said it was the BetMGM that had
But
the
MGM plus 4,000.
alleged, yeah.
Yeah. Allegedly. Yeah. Allegedly indeed. Allegedly indeed. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, I have the Arizona tickets. I probably am not going to chase. I mean, that looks to be a sinking
Sinking
ship.
ship. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. BYU looks good. They do. They look
Yeah.
really good. And they look
Yeah.
really good defensively, which I think is important in this Big 12 because it seems like that's kind of the main differentiator week in and week out. If you can kind of play consistent defense, you can have I think you're going to have a lot of success. Can we bring the landscape back up? You talked about Notre Dame, Army versus Navy.
Mhm.
There's also it gets deeper. If
Ooh.
Army and Navy are at the top of the AAC, they would play each other in that championship.
Mhm.
And then the very next week, they would play each other in
Commander
the
in Chief
Army
Bowl.
Navy
Yeah, sorry,
game.
yeah. Yeah.
And so the committee clearly did not think about these two teams. And they could really find themselves in a very interesting situation where one of those teams wins the AAC and then plays the next week, and then the other team wins. And what do you do in this situation? One of these teams, it just they could have won the game in the championship game, but then lose the next game. What does that actually mean? Yeah, it's kind of a clusterfuck there. I think they're just banking. They're praying. I'll say this: if you are adamant that sports are rigged, you need to put your money where your mouth is, and you have to parlay Notre Dame to win both of those games. Because that's exactly what the committee would have to. They would need that to happen. Like they really want losses for Army Navy. They need those losses actually, because then it makes it all kind of work out. So, and God forbid if Notre Dame were to lose to both those teams. I mean that's got to be one of the biggest data points. Texas looks really good. Ohio State looked good. The thing we talk a little bit about for Oregon, a little bit better each week. They took it to the max. They got a little bit better each week, and they just happened to get a little bit better against arguably the number one team in the nation in Ohio State. And so I don't want to overreact here that Oregon's going to be, some world beater. Already the market opened at 28 versus Purdue and immediately bought that down through the 28 to the 27. So, I mean, the market isn't completely convinced either that this is a world beater, but Oregon obviously comes out with a huge win. Does that do anything for you in putting them, at the top 10, top 5 spot?
See, I'm torn here because we talked about this last week, and for me, Oregon's one of those teams like it's frustrating to watch because they don't live up to their potential. We talked about week in and week out about this team has the talent. They're really great. They just don't put it all together. And you see specifically Dylan Gabriel making mistakes in weeks 4, 5, 6 that he shouldn't be making anymore. And to their credit, they did seem to put it all together against Ohio State, and they came out with a victory here. I'm not calling it a fluke. I'm not saying that. I think this team is legitimate. I think the team that beat Ohio State is truly how good Oregon is. I'm still just not convinced that we're done seeing the inconsistencies of that team week in and week out. Granted, and we've seen every team be vulnerable, right? We've seen Alabama be vulnerable, Georgia, Texas to an extent, right? So I want to be fair here, but I don't know if I can put them in my top 4 just yet. I don't know if I can put them over Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia, and Bama, all those teams together. So
Gotcha. Okay.
even though I know they just beat Ohio State, I know that's a little
it's fair. I mean, yeah. Penn State, those tickets looking they're not winners yet, but but I mean, this is going to come down to Penn State, and they were able to eke out against USC. I mean, a hard fought win, but a team again not losing, and that's going to be the name of the game for making the playoff and making the Big Ten championship. And now we're sitting with Ohio State here with the one loss rather than Oregon. I think that can be really interesting here at the end to see what ends up happening. All right, so that's kind of what's going on in college. I don't think there's anything. That isn't true. I want to talk about one other thing I did read, and I don't know the user, so sorry, I'm not giving you credit, but thought this is a really good idea. Well, not necessarily a good idea, but a good thought. you want to be a Georgia supporter this week, the better bet is bet Carson Beck to win the Heisman plus 1,200. Now we've talked about some of these angles this weekend or in the past week, sorry, and we've talked about Ewers, and we've talked about Alabama's quarterback, and this is this is a kind of another third character here, which fits the same logic, which is if Georgia beats Texas and they go on and they win the national championship, they're going to make the playoff, and they go through this process. Is this the last game you're going to be able to get Carson Beck at a good price? We talked about how efficient this Georgia team is throwing the ball. They're 21st passing offense, so he's having a good season statistically. So he's got the stats. He's definitely going to have the games, and therefore, if he wins those games, he's going to have the resume. Give me your thoughts on that. Is I don't usually like these pie in the sky stuff, but I think there could be a play here if you do believe in the Georgia pathway.
Yeah, and I think he had the story almost built there. I mean, if Georgia holds on to that Alabama lead or the lead at Alabama, right? I mean, that is like textbook comeback, the resiliency and the sky's the limit, right? I'm with you. I think there definitely is a pathway there. I think whenever you're in the SEC, you're gonna have ample opportunities to get back there. So for me, what I'm looking at, kind of like you mentioned here, so you got to beat Texas first and foremost, right? But if you go through there, you finish out your season beating a ranked Tennessee team, a ranked Ole Miss team, and then probably facing Bama or Texas, most likely Texas again in the championship game, and you beat them again. Like, how can you say no, right? How can you say no if you beat either of those teams? So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is definitely a feel-good spot.
Well, and
a buy low spot.
But it doesn't the Alabama loss almost fit into the story? Like, they lost early enough that like you forget about the loss. I mean, these early losses are almost part of the character building and the storytelling. And the storytelling aspect of the Heisman is insanely important. That's why I don't think that the market right now buying Boise State's running back, I think is just so foolish. He has no shot of winning. He doesn't have the story. You have to have the story, and part of the story is playing in big games and going, your team in some trajectory of playoffs or close to it. And I don't think Boise State, maybe they end up in the playoffs, but I don't see how any game on their schedule is big enough for them to win. I think the SEC quarterbacks, unfortunately, are the best place to be looking for this because they all are going to have the story. Now it's all about which team can you identify that you think is going to have the story and get the story, and it all actually pans out that way. And that's why we've talked about Ewers, we've talked about Alabama's quarterback, and I think that Carson Beck could fit this mold here. So just a thought. If anybody's out there wants to be a Georgia backer and they think that Georgia's going to win this game against Texas, that might be also a play to take a look at.
Can I say one last thing before we move on to our model picks?
Please.
Speaking of quarterbacks,
okay,
Cam Rising. So reports, rumors, entry into the ether, that Kyle Whittingham is considering, and obviously this Cam would have a lot to do with this, it'd be a decision, is considering putting a medical red shirt for Cam Rising, which would then make him eligible for an 8th year of college football because he's only played 3 games so far. As long as you don't play 4, you're eligible for a medical red shirt. I say all this to say we talk about being backers and being auto faders. Is Utah on auto fade alert? Because we talked about it last week. ASU versus the Utah, and I said Utah is absolutely on upset alert, and we talked about the splits between Isaac Wilson and Cam Rising. Well, Cam Rising played that game, and clearly he was still hurt. Clearly, whatever was
he got hurt in that game.
Yeah, right. Like
his
clearly, like
he's up.
Yeah, exactly. Like clearly he wasn't 100% healthy, but incredibly inefficient, right? To the point where you had legitimate calls for Wilson to get back out there, and we've seen what that offense can do with him at the helm. Is Utah on just auto fade alert trying to get ahead of this, of knowing that Cam Rising is not coming back? And with a schedule, quite frankly, they've got BYU, they've got Colorado, they've got Iowa State, in the 3-game stretch there. For me, I think that's 0-3. And then you have the toss-ups of TCU, Houston, who's been pretty bad this year, and UCF. Games that 3 weeks ago, I would have said you're crazy to even hint that those would be close games. But now I don't know.
Well, this
It's
is why
Utah and
you
auto fade.
yeah,
Go ahead.
this is why you run preseason models. We're under 9.5 wins for Utah. I already
Yeah.
took the auto fade.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, you're right. So the head coach said today he's out indefinitely. So he's definitely not going to start in the coming weeks. He said he
Mhm.
might be out for the season. I don't know. How old is he? I don't think he's. I think we have a unique perspective on college, or at least I do. I mean, I was in college until I was 28, so
He's
I can.
25.
Okay, see, so like, who am I to judge? He's got another 3 years from my perspective. So in that way, hey, stay. Why not? And the man's getting paid. Like
Yeah.
he's got to be. He might have one of the best college setups of all time. He's probably going to make more if he stays next year than if he leaves, and because he's not going to the NFL.
Right.
So what's he going to do? Just stay. I don't know about auto fade. I don't know. They played okay. This team hasn't getting like ASU's a good team. They are a good team. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, BYU is going to be a big game. Iowa State, you said they play it. Those are going to be two big games. I think the 9.5. I mean, you don't want to cash a ticket before it's cash, but I mean, they basically have their next loss cashes the ticket. So, injuries to rising, unfortunate, but for us, part of the underplay. So, yeah, it's a good call out. Okay, that brings us in to off the numbers. We got to make some own personal picks. We're going to look at a couple of different things that all three of us kind of use, independent of the model, a little bit combination of the model, a little bit of different. Okay, we're missing Kevin this week. So he has made his pick to be over 77.5 in Utah State, New Mexico, -110 over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Rationale. He says both teams allergic to defense, both in bottom 10 of adjusted EPA play allowed. Might be 100 scored in this one. Shout out. I didn't really look too much in it. I know the model likes a little bit of a Utah State, so it's definitely some firepower there. All right, Steve, what is your off the numbers pick?
Yeah, and interesting. So that Utah State, New Mexico opened up at 71.5, and it's gotten bought up as high as 80. Then it's coming back down to 78.5. So
shout out.
Yeah,
allergic indeed.
Sheesh. Yes, my off the numbers pick. I have Iowa -6.5, -105 on FanDuel. What I'm looking at here is, can this Iowa offense get it going against Michigan State? We saw them put up 40 against Washington. And interestingly enough, Iowa's strength has been the run on offense. Caleb Johnson has been getting the job done there. Michigan State is battle tested. Don't get me wrong. Michigan State actually, from an EPA standpoint, statistically has a slightly better defense than Iowa does. And Aiden Childs, the quarterback for Michigan State, is, he's no slouch either. But for me, what I'm looking at is, can Iowa kind of figure it out? Because we've seen two big glimpses now of what it looks like if both Caleb Johnson and Cade McNamara can get it going on the ground and through the air. And if they do, watch out. This team is absolutely dangerous and they're absolutely scary. So I'm banking on them kind of putting some momentum together against a Michigan State team who we've seen get beat up by some of the upper echelon teams. Now, Iowa's not Iowa's not Ohio State or anybody like that. Let's not get crazy. But I think this team can compete. So I like a 6.5 at the cheap -105. That's my off the numbers pick.
Okay, perfect. And Eric, can we pull up the off the number thing? Does it have the record in there? I forgot. I didn't go over that. I don't remember the record. Do you know your record, Steve?
I do. And let me say there's no excuses in betting. I'm gonna give some excuses here. I'm 0-3. I've gotten cute twice here. I've gotten cute on the SMU over. I should have just taken over Florida State. And on this podcast, I said ASU +5.5. Like, that is the bet. And that was gonna be my bet, but I let this damn social media get the best of me. And I wanted my Pat McAfee Red River shootout clip. So I took them instead as the over 49, and that did not cash.
Okay. I honestly don't. I don't know what Kevin is. I think he might be 3-0 or 2-1. I was on Penn State -3.5 last week, and they won by 3. So I'm 2-1. So Kevin's either 2-1 or 3-0. So just to go over the records here. So Steve 0-3, I am 2-1, and then Kevin is either 3-0 or 2-1. So we're either tied or Kevin's in first place.
Kevin had under 48.5 in that USC Penn State game.
And
what was the
think it went over.
score?
He had under or over?
He had under.
USC versus Penn State.
Went way over, says Eric.
Okay.
Shout out.
So we're 2-1. Me and Kevin are tied. Okay. All right. This is how I take the lead then. This is 2 major data points. I cheated. A model loves Army. Loves it, loves it, loves it. We didn't bet it because it doesn't exactly meet our rules, but it loves Army. Army, 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 go Army, beat Navy. Second, they're playing East Carolina. We were on East Carolina about 3 weeks ago. Played Liberty. 2 huge turnovers. 21-0. East Carolina versus Liberty. East Carolina shits the bed and not only does not cover this game, they lose the game outright against Liberty. That shows me East Carolina is obviously not mentally tough enough, and they're going to go against a triple option Army team that is just throwing the ball. They're doing whatever the hell they want. East Carolina just doesn't have the mental toughness here. Give me Army 14.5 minus 110 over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. And I think this is patty cake. This is patty cake. Market tells me I'm wrong. It's basically been just coming down day after day after day. I might pick up some more. This opened at 17, now sitting all the way at 15. I might have to go back.
Give me some more.
Yeah, I might have to. So, yeah, go Army beat Navy round 2 in a week. I might just ride this team until they lose for me, or they make it to the national championship. One of the
other way. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So those are the off the numbers this week. I'm on Army minus 14.5. Steve, you are on Iowa minus 6.5. And Kevin is on over 77.5 Utah State versus New Mexico. All right. Perfect. Now we got one thing left, Steve. We got to go over the model picks for week 8. We were coming off a huge week. 7-1. Man. Mississippi Southern Miss really we could have pulled through. We were covering just for a second there in the third. Thought, maybe they can pull this out. No shot. It was a good week overall. Back to a large volume week. We got a bunch of volume. The overall model record now is 43-41. We're at the halfway point. So you can see how much volume we're on forecast. So we're basically forecasted to do about 165, 170 bets. So we got about another 60-ish bets, or I guess 80-ish bets to go. So a lot of games left. Okay, let's go over. We are on Friday Night Lights, Oklahoma State 7.5 headed into Saturday. We are on Old Dominion plus 10.5, Baylor plus 6.5, Wake plus 1.5, Washington State minus 19.5, Colorado plus 3.5, UCLA plus 7, LSU minus 2.5, Georgia plus 3.5, Alabama minus 2.5. Some bonus picks that the model kind of picked up later that we talked about that we didn't necessarily give out to the clients, but did show value was Michigan 1.5 and Utah State plus 2.5, Stanford plus 14.5. Those all have big caveats on them. Play those at your own risk. Big card this weekend. Big card. How you feeling?
Yeah, no, big card. Listen, we talk about mentally tough, right? This is not for the faint of heart. No, I love it. I feel pretty good about this. Obviously we talked about the Oklahoma State game and the uncertainty there. I know you and I talked offline about the Stanford game and kind of the edges that kind of seem too good to be true there. So, going back and forth on the quarterback there. But overall, no, I love this card. I love that we're on some of the big marquee matchups. I love that we're on some of the we call them the lower tier, second tier matchups. Get a good mix of games. So overall, let's see how it goes. But I'm liking it.
Yeah, this will be, I think, our first time betting on Colorado. We bet against them one time. We were on Baylor. Baylor obviously took that game to overtime. They end up losing on a fumble. They're going against our Wildcats. The market has agreed with us here. This opened at 5. Yeah. I think we were able to catch a 3.5. Unfortunately, some injuries there at Colorado for wide receiver, but Hunter will be ready, and I'm excited to see what we can get there. Unfortunately, we're just not getting a full strength Colorado team, which I think would be a slam dunk. But overall, an interesting game. We're on a lot of the marquee matchups, so It's going to give us a reason to sweat and get to watch them. And then we're going to be at the Alabama game. So we'll see. I guess it'll be a win-win day for us, because if Alabama loses, then we just get to storm the field and just live our best good old Rocky Top life. All right. That is week 8 in the books. We will see what ends up happening this week, but we march on. If you want to sign up, make sure you go to the website btb-analytics.com. You can get a ton of all of the data that we talked about. Is completely free and available for you to handicap any teams. And if you want access to the model and bet it when we bet it and become members with us, you can also check that out over on the website as well. All right, Steve, anything before we get out of here?
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you could throw in a comment for what you want to see in week 9 as far as matchups, we can make sure to prioritize those. So we review those in week 9. All right, Steve. Well, it was good hanging out with you guys, and it was good hanging out with you, Steve. And we will see you all next week. As always, good luck.